Primetime local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with a look at Saskatchewan's COVID-19 numbers. 3 more people who tested positive for COVID-19 in Saskatchewan have died. There are 207 new cases in the province, with 11 in the northwest. 9 of those are in the immediate Lloydminster area, where we have 111 active cases. 2,397 cases are considered active in Saskatchewan, with 207 in the northwest. 174 people are in hospital, with 5 in the northwest. To date, 223 cases in our zone are variants of concern. Over 450,000 vaccine doses have been administered in Saskatchewan, with over 32,000 of those in our zone. Last year, the Lloydminster Sport Riders placed a ghost bike in the city to commemorate a fellow rider who passed away in a motorcycle accident. And with May being Motorcycle Awareness Month, they set up the Bike Friday on College Drive to raise awareness in the community. In the Alberta Safety Traffic Calendar, May focuses on motorcycle safety. This type of campaign helps remind drivers of motorcycles on the road, and setting up the ghost bike in a high traffic area also helps bring attention to it.
Put it out to raise awareness for people that motorcycles are back out. It's spring, it's warm, so everyone's got to be attentive, because it's really easy to hide a motorcycle in the pillar of your car, anywhere, and we want to make sure everyone gets home safe. So we want to help bring the awareness to make sure that people realize that there is motorcycles out there, and a lot of motorcyclists are putting their lives on the line when they get on the road, because for them a simple accident could be life-threatening.
The ghost bike was put out last July on a hill overlooking 62nd Avenue, which was met with great support from the community.
It's unbelievable, the community response. People seen it, even though it was in a dark spot, everyone knew what it was, where it was, and it was overwhelming. And then when we went to pick up the bike at the end of it all, there was multiple more flowers put on it, and people have added their little touch to it. But we want to try and leave it as basic as possible, so that it doesn't represent one thing, it represents a whole.
The Lloydminster RCMP not only want to remind drivers of the safety precautions to take when motorcycles are on the road, but also remind cyclists of a few things they should be aware of.
Lots of hazards on the road. There's lots of different things going on within the city, such as street sweeping or streets cleaning, debris on the roadway, especially as the motorcycle season begins. So we want just motorcyclists to be aware of those types of things, the condition of the roadway. Effective protective equipment for sure is a big one that most people are aware of.
The Lloydminster Sport Riders plan on moving the ghost bike around the city so they can get more involvement from Lloydminster residents or those driving through. This week marks the 70th annual Mental Health Week by the Canadian Mental Health Association. Connor Chan has more on the week as a whole and what they hope to achieve.
Well, joining us here today on Primetime Local News is Executive Director Phyllis O'Connor from the Canadian Mental Health Association, the Saskatchewan division. This week is Mental Health Week. So Phyllis, what is Mental Health Week for those that don't know?
This is actually the 70th Mental Health Week that's been held. The first week of May every year, we have a week that CMHA promotes that gets people about thinking about their mental wellness. And it's an education piece. It's a bit of an advocacy piece, actually, to make sure that we are getting appropriate supports for people in place, but mostly to teach people how to build their own resilience, how to take care of their own mental health and how to talk about it.
Can you share with us some stats in Saskatchewan from pre-pandemic to currently when it comes to our mental health? Because obviously, of course, over the last year, mental health has been a major topic here in the province.
Right now, actually, what we're finding out is like 8 out of 10 people are reporting, that they're feeling anxiety or maybe stressed or isolation. So yeah, that's a huge number of people, and it's largely because of the pandemic that we've seen this spike where more people are feeling the effects of what COVID-19 has brought for us. So that's why this year Mental Health Week is really talking about get real how you feel. A lot of people think that they have to kind of suppress that and keep those feelings to themselves. But you know what? Anybody who's having those feelings of anxiousness or just even fatigue, that's perfectly normal. Our generation has never lived through anything like this pandemic. It's been absolutely crazy, and it's just perfectly normal that it's affecting people's mental health in a negative way. So it's important we talk about it. They're calling it, name it, don't shame it, name it, don't numb it. So it's just a case of, acknowledging those feelings and, finding ways. And we have lots of things within our mental health week kits to help people learn to cope with some of those feelings that are perfectly normal. If you are finding that you're struggling, please, don't feel any shame. Reach out and get some help. It's so critical. And it's no different than if you had a physical health problem. You just need to take care of it. And the great thing is that there is hope that, there's going to be an end to this pandemic someday. And with that, maybe a lot of the mental health issues will gradually kind of ease up too. So we have hope on the horizon.
You do make some really good points, because there are people, of course, who are ashamed or maybe too proud to ask for help. How hard is it for people to really embrace their emotions and feelings when it comes to their mental illness?
Yeah, it can be tough because, stigma is still out there, and they're still in a lot of people's minds. Any kind of a mental health issue is a bit of a shameful thing or a sign of weakness, but it's not. And it's really important when you bury those feelings and don't get them out, it actually increases the anxiety, the depression. It's really important that people are feeling safe to recognize that right now I'm struggling and maybe I need to reach out for some help. Now it might be, something that requires some formal counseling, or it might be something that requires maybe some medication. That's okay. It's no different than a physical illness. It's an illness and you need to take care of it. And sometimes, it's just having a supportive friend that you can just talk to. We've actually started in Saskatchewan something called our Wellness Response Support Line. And it's meant for just exactly that. It's not counseling, but it's just somebody to talk to, when you maybe feel that you're struggling, and possibly they can help refer into some services that might help support. But often, the folks calling there, they just want someone to talk to. They just want to let somebody know that they're struggling. And that friendly voice on the other end of the line can be a huge help sometimes too. And then, certainly our own social networks too, our family, our friends. You can't be together, but it doesn't mean you have to be socially isolated. You can still keep in touch, whether it's by phone or by Zoom calls or video chats, whatever, just to keep that connection, because, that's so critical for human beings. We're hardwired to be socially connected, and this COVID has taken that away.
You did mention that you are offering some kits for people to go look at. Where can people go and find them if they want to have a look for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. The CMHA national website, which is cmha.ca. If you just put in the search engine there, their mental health toolkit or mental health week toolkit, you'll find all that in there. There's all kinds of great suggestions for ways to build your resilience and deal with some of these feelings. So definitely encourage people to go have a look at that.
Phyllis, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for sharing what the Canadian Mental Health Association is doing for this 70th anniversary of Mental Health Week. So thank you.
It's time now for Retrospect. Here's Blake Nate.
This week in Retrospect. Back in '96, aging infrastructure slows the flow of southbound oil.
They've had problems for years. They've got a monopoly on a system, and to most of our feelings, they haven't really served it that well.
Mike Heyer is talking about the interprovincial pipeline, the oil lifeline between the Midwest and the United States. And now, as has been the case in past years, Heyer says the aging IPL is having a problem transporting large amounts of oil to market.
Primary reason is just simply they don't have the capacity on their system. They've been hit again with, my understanding is some pressure reductions. They had some problems in some of their testing.
And these problems are causing big headaches here in the Midwest.
As it cuts down its production, it naturally backs up further on down the line to the local batteries eventually, and then of course to our field wells. And when that happens, of course, wells get shut in and transportation slows down.
All of this isn't good news, especially with the price of oil being as high as it has been recently.
And In 2001, a special event at St. Thomas brings spies and espionage to the border city.
After weeks of secrecy, St. Thomas students finally saw what teachers had been keeping from them.
Our top secret mission that we prepared for the kids, and it's actually different experiments that they can do in science.
Kindergarten through to grade 3 chose to accept their mission this morning. Then in the afternoon, grades 4 through 7 experienced science at its finest.
I had actually no idea. I just thought it'd be like this test or something on secret mission stuff, so I didn't think it'd be that much fun, but it was a lot of fun.
It was pretty amazing. There was a lot of different stuff. You had to use your mind, your hands, everything. You had to use a lot of your mind to do a lot of this stuff because it was pretty difficult.
It was awesome. How come? Because it was like really fun with everything, and like especially the goop stuff.
And that's all for this week in retrospect.
Retrospect this week is brought to you by Webb's Ford. Worth your while to drive the extra mile. Webb's Ford in Vermilion.
Now our Connor Channel, take a first look at your weather forecast.
All right, thanks very much, Jasmine. Of course, we did have a pretty decent weekend. We saw a little bit of showers, but not too much, as we're still kind of in a little bit of a drought, and that's going to continue to be so for a little bit here, as we're still kind of below seasonal averages in the northern parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan. But right now, the winds definitely died down. We did see that pick up a lot over the weekend, so 7 kilometers an hour is what it's at right now. But 7 degrees is what our temperature's at, with some sun and a bit of cloud coverage as we take a look to the rest of some other areas in our zone here, with 9 degrees in Vermilion, Marwayne, 8 in St. Paul, Bonnyville, Cold Lake, and Lac La Biche, then 10s in Vegreville, Wainwright, as well as in Provost. And then we look in North Battleford, 7 degrees as well, same as us, and then 9 in Maidstone, and then we'll see another 7 in Green Lake and 4 in Isle La Crosse. There is expected a heavy occurrence of rain that could make its way into parts of Alberta, mainly in the Edmonton, Wainwright, Edmonton, Red Deer areas, as they could see potential thunderstorms and rain-snow mixes in parts of Alberta over the next couple of 24 to 48 hours. But for us here in the Lloydminster area, we're still going to be in a little bit of a drought, as much as Saskatchewan has been over the last couple of weeks rather, but we won't be seeing any heavy rain, at least maybe until next week or so. But looking overnight, we will see clear skies as it drops to -7 overnight in North Battleford, going into 13 degrees tomorrow for the daytime high with a sun and cloud mix. Looking at Cold Lake, clear skies as well, -5 expected for overnight, and then 12 degrees overnight. Tomorrow is our daytime high, with increased cloud coverage. And then for us here at Lloydminster, we will also see -5, but we're going to have a little bit more cloud coverage tomorrow ourselves as well, with that high of 14 degrees. Looking ahead to Wednesday, we are going to get a little bit warmer throughout the week as we take a look at our 3-day forecast here. 16 on Wednesday and a low of 0, so we're still going to have some pretty chilly mornings. Going into Thursday, we'll have a nice high of 19 degrees. We won't see a whole lot of sun, but still nice temperatures nonetheless throughout the day. That is a look at your weather forecast for now. We'll have more primetime local news after the break.
This past weekend saw 259 players start their NFL journey. Evan Kenny has more, breaking down the 2021 NFL Draft.
Well, Thursday night, the NFL Draft started with the first round. Saturday, things wrapped up. Joining me today to break all this down from the Tuesday Night Sports Show on Real Country 95.9, Greg Buchanan. Greg, thanks for taking this time.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, Bucky, as I said, big night for the NFL with the draft going there. Let's just jump into things here. Starting things off, who do you think was the winner of the night for the NFL Draft?
When you're talking about winners and losers from a draft, you're projecting, right? This is going to be great for them if. So there's a lot of ifs going into this right now. And I think you look at the Chicago Bears and they get Fields, 11th overall, and here's a guy, Justin Fields, quarterback for Ohio State, that was 1 and 2 or 3. Like he was a legit potentially number 1 or 2, and then he dropped, and nobody was really saying why he dropped so much. But I think the Bears have been looking for a quarterback for the longest time. They may have finally found their guy. And on top of that, the interview he did after he got drafted, saying he is the best quarterback available in the NFL draft. If you think about that, you think about the great quarterbacks that did go, to say that, that tells you he does not lack confidence.
And Greg, just to add on to that point, I totally agree. Chicago Bears, I think they did phenomenal. For myself, I am a Bears fan, so maybe I am slightly biased. But, another big thing the Bears were missing was offensive line talent. They picked up Tevin Jenkins, another guy that they traded up for in this draft. And Mike Gundy, the coach for Oklahoma State University, even said, Jenkins could be one of the best offensive linemen coming out of this draft. So I think Chicago saw their needs and they addressed them for sure. Now, Greg, going on to maybe the losers of the draft, in my mind, it's got to be the Green Bay Packers. I mean, we've heard different rumors going around about Aaron Rodgers wanting out. In my mind, you hear your star quarterback wants out. You got to give him something to work with, something that makes him want to stay. And Greg, they didn't choose a wide receiver until the 3rd round there. I guess just going forward, what are your thoughts on the whole Aaron Rodgers situation in Green Bay?
You got to look at this. Green Bay's not a bad football team, Aaron. They've had good offense. So why is it so important for you to have a receiver to play with you, Aaron? You were a win away from the Super Bowl. You were the MVP. So things aren't that bad in Green Bay. But almost to a point where, come on, who's kidding who? Guess who's waiting in the wings? There's a quarterback, Love, sitting there waiting in the wings, waiting for his opportunity. So in the back of Aaron's mind, he's got to be thinking, I'm going to be replaced eventually, which is what they should be doing. He's long in the tooth, but they're still treading those tires for Aaron Rodgers. So yeah, I understand where he's coming from, but again, another disgruntled all-star quarterback that wants his way or the highway, and he's saying it's either him or the GM. Guess who usually wins out is the GM. So Aaron Rodgers likely going to Southern Cal.
Well, and Aaron Rodgers was part of a scenario, back when he was a rookie in the NFL, sort of replacing Brett Favre. It's got to kind of be expected when you are Aaron Rodgers, kind of just flipping the script here, Bucky. Now, Greg, in this NFL draft, Canadians kind of stole the show, or I guess you could say from a Canadian aspect, tying the record for most Canadians taken in an NFL draft with 4. Is there one guy out of this group of 4 here that you think will impact their team more than others?
Well, an Alberta boy, Chuba Hubbard, you want to say, yeah, he's going to, I don't know about that. I really like Josh Palmer, wide receiver out of Tennessee, a basketball player converted to a football player. So great athlete, great jump, great vertical. Maybe doesn't have the speed, but in the NFL game, you can kind of get away with that if you fight for the ball and win those battles. So he had 2 of his biggest games against 2 of the best defenses in the U.S. college football in Georgia and also Alabama. So if he had those 2 good big games against those 2 teams, against very tough defensive teams, a good chance he could make a difference there with the Chargers, who are going through a rebuild. So he's going to get his opportunities.
And great quarterback with the Chargers in Justin Herbert. Greg, I'm going to go with Jevon Holland going to the Miami Dolphins. I just think he fits well into their system. He's a ball hawk safety who's going to do well working with the cornerbacks that they have there. Greg, it should be an exciting one moving forward to the NFL. I look forward to seeing what these players can do in the near future here.
Yeah, and that's $1 million question right now. We say that you're always projecting. So when you draft a player, you project where he's going to be. So they're projecting where some of these players will be in 2 or 3 years. There could be a Ryan Leaf out there. You're hoping you didn't draft a Ryan Leaf, who was one of the biggest busts in NFL history. But again, it might be a Tom Brady, who is in the late rounds. And we know what Brady did. He has enough Super Bowl rings for his entire hand. So yeah, you never know what you're going to get.
Now we're Connor Chan. We'll take another look at your weather forecast.
All right, thanks very much, Jasmine. As we still take a look at temperatures, we're kind of a little bit below seasonal still, as I kind of have mentioned that before. Most of northern Saskatchewan has been like that as well, and same with a little bit of parts of northern Alberta, and even some showers are on the way for southern Alberta, but I'll touch on that in just a bit here. Looking right now, we went up 1 degree, sitting at 8 right now, same with Cold Lake, as well as we see 12s in Edmonton, Red Deer, Edson, and Whitecourt, 13 for Jasper, and then 10 in Athabasca. Looking to Saskatchewan now, we see a little bit cooler temperature still with the 7s in Prince Albert, Alberta, North Battleford, and then 6 for Meadow Lake in Melfort, and then 8 degrees in Saskatoon. Looking up north, still a little bit chillier as with those below seasonal temperatures. 3 degrees for La Loche and Buffalo Narrows, 2 in La Ronge and Flin Flon, 0 degrees we see in Uranium City, Stony Rapids as well, just to name a few of those cities there in northern Saskatchewan. Looking in northern Alberta now, we're taking a look to Peace River at 13 with 12 in Slave Lake, 7 degrees for Fort McMurray, and then 3 in Fort Chipewyan with 10 in High Level, and then 14 for Grand Prairie. Here's where it's going to kind of start to see a lot of that rain, as we will see some cities in Alberta in the southern parts, in the Calgary, as well as in the Red Deer areas and Lethbridge could see maybe upwards up to 15 millimeters of rain for tomorrow. And we take a look at temperatures for them right now with 12 for Calgary and Lethbridge, 15 in Medicine Hat, and then 10 degrees in Banff. Looking to southern Saskatchewan right now, no signs of rain for them yet, as the drought still kind of is a big storyline for Saskatchewan, as we haven't seen little to no rain at all so far this season, but we will have that change potentially maybe Monday, as we could see a bit of rain in the forecast. Looking to Swift Current, 10 degrees right now, and then 9 in Moose Jaw, as well as in Kindersley, 8 degrees in Regina, and 6 in Yorkton. Looking across the country, lots of cloud coverage still for most parts of the cities out east. Winnipeg at 8 degrees, 12 in Quebec City, 10 in Toronto, and then 3 degrees in St. John's. Looking over to the west now, we do see some rain out in Vancouver with that high of 11 degrees. Yellowknife at 3 right now, and then 10 degrees in Whitehorse with some sun and cloud mixes. Now looking forward tomorrow, we are going to warm up a little bit here, sitting at 14, and we'll see that around the area here in the Vermilion, Marwayne areas as well. We'll see some 12s up north in the Bonnyville, Cold Lake area with 11 in Lac La Biche, and then looking to Saskatchewan really quickly here with Maidstone and North Battleford at 13, and we'll see 11s up in the Green Lake and Meadow Lake areas up north. Looking to the next 7 days, 16 degrees on Wednesday, 19 there for Thursday, as we'll see some cloud coverage continuing on, but a little bit warmer going into Thursday, and then it's going to kind of start to cool down there Friday at 14, 15 on Saturday with the sun and cloud mix continuing on into Sunday with that high of 16, and then a chance of some rain ourselves here potentially on Monday with that high of 16. We did see a little bit of glimpse of that last weekend, but not a whole lot. But this weekend, on the Monday, we could see a little bit more. That is a look at your 7-day forecast. We'll have more primetime local news after the break.
I am joined here today for Primetime Local News with Lewis Smith from the Canada Safety Council. Now, from May 1st to May 7th is National Summer Safety Week. What is the council wanting to bring awareness to?
Well, this year we wanted to focus on water safety for a couple of reasons. The first and foremost is, of course, with COVID, we wanted to focus specifically on activities that might be a little bit safer to do in smaller groups. Obviously, being outdoors, a great benefit to avoiding the spread, and being in the water still brings us a bit of that summertime cheer that we're all desperately needing these days. But that said, we wanted to focus in exclusively, or almost exclusively, I should say, on unintentional water entries. That's what we in the water safety industry call accidental drownings. People who end up in the water who didn't intend on being in the water and who end up suffering a fatality as a result. So we want to draw special attention into those folks. And because in a lot of cases, people will end up in the water who don't want to be in the water. So we want to make sure that that's front of mind for anyone who might find themselves in a similar situation.
And on average, how many incidents a year happen to people involving swimming and drowning in these situations?
In these situations, we don't have a concrete number year over year, but we're looking at somewhere in the vicinity of about 900 between 2008 and 2017. Comparatively, we're talking about somewhere in the vicinity of 500 drownings overall every year. So 900 over a 10-year span versus 500 a year, we're probably talking in the vicinity of 90 fatalities a year.
And can you explain a bit more on how people can get in these incidents just by accident?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple of factors that do tend to come up fairly often in unintentional water entry. The first is that about 3/4 of people who end up dying due to unintentional water entry are alone. So they're not supervised, or they don't have someone watching out for them. Oftentimes we're talking about children. So supervision, of course, is an absolutely crucial factor of this discussion. On top of that, we can also talk about how the overwhelming majority, to the tune of 81%, are men. So typically that does come with a little bit of bravado or of that mentality that I don't need anyone looking out for me because I can take care of myself. When in reality, the water doesn't tend to make that distinction. It's very equal opportunity offender. And lastly, we can also talk about the cross section of folks who tend to drown just as a whole. A disproportionate amount of people who drown in Canada are either from up north, where there tends to be a lot more water and a lot more melting ice. They tend to be Indigenous, or they tend to be new Canadians. And in some cases, a cross section of all of the above.
And what tips would the council give for people in these situations for how to avoid it?
Well, the number one tip that we give is, and in fact, the main theme of our National Summer Safety Week this year is don't overlook swimming lessons. It seems like such an obvious point of discussion. I think most of us were involved in swimming lessons as children, but it's important to continue that tradition because when you're thrown into the water unexpectedly, you need to know this instinctively. It's not the kind of thing where you can stop, assess your surroundings and figure out where you're going from there. You need to be able to instinctively swim to safety. And so we recommend swimming lessons, absolutely. We've also worked with the Drowning Prevention Research Center and the Life Saving Society on this campaign. The Life Saving Society does offer a course that is specifically designed for unintentional entry in deep water. So we highly recommend that program. It's called the Swim to Survive program. Beyond that, everyday tips that we would offer include, make sure you're not going around water areas alone, especially if they're not fenced off or if there's no barricade between you and the water. It's important to have someone around who can jump in and save you if you need it. Supervision for parents with children, of course, is an absolute must. I think anyone who's been around children for any amount of time at all knows how easy it is for them to wander off or to end up suddenly and unexpectedly in a place where they're not intended to be. And last but not least, we would also recommend wearing your personal flotation device. This is so often a point of contention because the law does require that whenever you're on a boat or whenever you're on or around the water, that you have a life jacket available. At the Canada Safety Council, we suggest going a step further and making sure that you're wearing it at all times because it's not especially useful to have one in your surroundings. If something unexpected happened and you get thrown in the water, you won't necessarily have the time to find it and put it on. So we recommend wearing a life jacket at all times.
And does the council believe statistics have changed throughout the summer these past 2 years for these incidents since the pandemic has changed some things?
It's difficult to tell with drowning stats, especially. These numbers do tend to be delayed by a few years. Anecdotally, I can say that I can say that we've seen fewer incidents, or I've seen fewer incidents come across my desk. But as far as Canada as a whole, that will need to wait and see on the data.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything else you'd like to add for people to know about concerning National Summer Safety Week?
I would highly encourage people to check out our website, canadasafetycouncil.org. In addition to our campaign this year on drowning safety and on water safety as a whole, we also have a whole back catalog of topics dealing with anything from heat stroke to keeping yourself hydrated.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me again today, Louis.
My pleasure, Shelby. Thanks for having me.
This month, police in Saskatchewan will be on the lookout for impaired drivers as part of SGI's Traffic Safety Spotlight for the month of May. Joining me to talk a little bit more about this is Tyler McMurtry from SGI. So Tyler, what is the main message that SGI would like to get out this month?
What we're trying to get across to people this month is, even though the weather is going to be nice and there may be that desire to get together with some friends for some socially distant drinks on a patio or in a backyard or on a deck somewhere, we want people to keep in mind the importance of, no matter whatever your plans are, in addition to making sure that they comply with public health requirements, of course, is to make sure that those plans include a way to get home safely. And that means never getting behind the wheel if you're impaired by alcohol or drugs.
And I saw the yearly stats from 2020 showed that close to 40 people, I believe, died from crashes that were caused by impaired driving, and I think almost 400 people were injured. Can you talk about some of the other consequences that drivers can face when they're driving impaired?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, the most significant consequences are somebody losing their life or being seriously injured as a result of impaired driving. And of course, that never needs to happen. Impaired driving is 100% preventable, and nobody ever needs to drive impaired. But we want people to also be aware of, even if they don't end up in a collision that injures or kills somebody, the consequences for impaired driving are quite significant. They start with the administrative consequences right at roadside when you're charged with an indefinite license suspension and your vehicle is impounded for at least 30 days. That's if you're charged criminally. Even if you're not charged criminally, if you are between 0.04 and 0.08 blood alcohol concentration, for experienced drivers, you're still looking at a 3-day vehicle impoundment and license suspension, in addition to requirements for mandatory alcohol driver education. Depending on the number of offenses you've had, the requirements go up and the consequences go up as well. And then, of course, just the idea of an impaired driving charge can really mess up your life. We talked about the suspensions and the impoundments. There's also the fact that you'll have to go to court, you'll have to deal with the outcome of that, significant fines, and potentially jail time, depending on the severity of the offense. After that, you're looking at ignition interlock requirements to get your license back, and significant safe driver recognition penalties as well. So really, it's just a bad idea all around, and that doesn't even get into the social cost, the guilt and the shame that you'll feel of having been convicted of impaired driving, having that criminal record, having to deal with that with your friends and your family, knowing that about you.
And when people think about impaired driving, a lot of times it's the main substance is alcohol, and now with the legalization of cannabis as well. But what are some other substances that people that impair people when they're driving?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be any drug that you take. I mean, if you're taking a drug to feel different, you're going to drive different as well. And so that can include any illicit drugs, in addition to alcohol and cannabis, of course, but also prescription drugs. Even if you have a prescription for it, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily safe to drive on it. And that's why we encourage people that if they are taking prescription medication, to be aware of the effects, have those conversations with your healthcare professional, and also be aware that if you mix prescription medication or drugs of any kind with alcohol, that can compound the impairing effects and really have unintended consequences when it comes to your ability to operate that motor vehicle safely.
Now, the message obviously this month is to not drive impaired, but what are some tips that people can put into practice to ensure that they aren't driving impaired and to help them and their friends?
Yeah, we always encourage people to make a plan beforehand. A lot of people will, I think, have experience knowing the fact that they're not making good decisions after they have started drinking or using drugs. So it's really important to make that plan beforehand, making a plan for a safe ride home, understanding that you need to have somebody in your bubble who can be a designated driver. And if you don't have one, maybe volunteer to be the designated driver for your bubble. And if you're impaired, don't get behind the wheel, of course. So that means taking a taxi or a ride share or a designated driving service if they're available in your community. Public transportation is also an option. But just whatever you do, find a better way, a better option than getting behind the wheel when you are impaired. And for those of us who are around people who are drinking or using drugs, it's important to, of course, be a good wingman and making sure that they don't make those decisions to get behind the wheel. I think we would all understand the feeling of what it would be like to live with that regret of knowing that you didn't stop somebody you cared about and they ended up in a collision that cost them their life or cost somebody else their life.
It's an important message to get out there and just to remind drivers to not drive impaired. So thanks so much, Tyler, for taking some time to talk with me. It's always great to talk with you and get your insight on stuff.
All right, taking one last look here at your weather forecast. We're going to have a little bit of a cloudy day tomorrow at a high of 14 degrees going into Wednesday. High of 16 as we gradually get a little bit warmer heading into Thursday with a high of 19. And it's going to kind of taper off a little bit on Friday as we are going to get a little bit chillier with 14, 15 there for Saturday. The sun and cloud mix continuing on. 16 also, we'll see that on Sunday. And then Monday, we could see our first official full day of rain there with a 75% chance of some showers occurring throughout the daytime.
Thank you for joining us on Primetime Local News. Have a great night.